As your practice grows, it's so important to be able to stay organized and keep on top of things, especially when it comes to documentation, filing insurance claims, keeping appointments straight, and getting reminders to people. Well, there's a great solution for all of that, and that is TherapyNotes. TherapyNotes is the leading electronic health record system for mental health providers. It's who I use in my practice. And so go check them out today, therapynotes.com. And if you use the coupon code Gordon, just GORDON, you can get 2 months free. So check them out today, therapynotes.com. This is the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, helping you to navigate your private practice journey. This is session number 121 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. Hello, folks. I'm Gordon Brewer, and thank you so much for joining me for this very special edition of the podcast. As we're all going through right now, and so I'm recording this on March 20th, 2020, we're going through some crisis times or some difficult times with the COVID-19 pandemic that is happening in the world, and it's got all of us concerned, and we're all feeling a whole lot of anxiety just in a lot of different areas of our life. And so I'm so grateful to the people that have joined me for this episode. I was able to reach out to a bunch of private practice consultants that were all working in this similar space, and they were all so gracious to join me to record this podcast episode. And also, you can find the video for this will also be on not only on the if you go to the Practice of Therapy and go to the post page for this episode, you'll get to watch the video. It's also been posted on Facebook on the Practice of Therapy Facebook page, and I know it's showing up on the other private practice consultants that joined me for this episode. They're going to be reposting as well. But I'm so grateful to these wonderful people that have joined me for this particular episode. So as I said, I'm so grateful to these people that join me, and they're great friends, and I'm just so happy that they're part of my life in this way. So just a quick introduction to these people that are joining me for this special episode. We've got Joe Sanok from Practice of the Practice, also Allison Pigeon from Practice of the Practice, Whitney Owens from Faith and Practice, also part of the Practice of the Practice network. I've got David Hall from Psych Maven who joined us. Also, Katie Lemieux from the Private Practice Startup podcast. Also, we have Marissa Lawton, who is the Empathy Rising podcast. Had Jane Carter, who is another private practice consultant from Asheville, North Carolina, to join us. Had Jessica Tepana, who is another private practice consultant who does a lot of great work around SEO. She's in private practice. Amanda Landry, or Amanda, aka Amanda Patterson, from the Private Practice Collective. Also had Casey Compton from Mindsight Behavioral to join us. She has a large private practice up in Kentucky and does some private practice consulting. Also, Katie Englert from Practicat. I want to make sure I'm not leaving anybody out here real quickly here. I mentioned John Clark, Whitney Owens, let's see, Amanda Landry, Joe Sanok, Katie Englert, Jane Carter, John Clark, David Hall, Marissa Lawton, Katie Lemieux, Allison Pigeon, Whitney Owens. I think that's got everybody that joined us for this episode. If I left one of you out, I apologize. But anyway, this is a longer episode, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking here. So just hunker down while you're taking a break from all the things that are going on, and you're isolating yourself, or you're just taking the time away from being around people and the social distancing that we're all doing right now. Take time to hunker down and listen to this wonderful episode. It's also going to be, as I think I mentioned already, you can watch the video on the Facebook page, Practice of Therapy Facebook page. It'll also be, there'll be the video of all of this will be published in several places. And my friends here that joined me for the episode are going to be republishing it as well. But we're talking about how COVID-19 is affecting our practices, things you can do to help yourself through this difficult time that we're all experiencing. So without further ado, here's the special edition of the Practice of Therapy podcast. I'm going to just go around and introduce, I'll let everyone introduce themselves and tell who you are, where you're from, and what my hope is with this whole process is that we're just going to share what's on our minds about the COVID-19 crisis we're in, and some ideas about how we can help with our practices, and go from there. So here we go. So I'm Gordon Brewer. I'm from the Practice of Therapy, and I have a podcast that's out there. And and I just provide resources for people like you that are in private practice. So I'm gonna go to my right, Whitney Owens. I'm gonna pass it to you.
Hey everybody, this is Whitney Owens. I'm a consultant through Practice the Practice. I also have a podcast called the Faith and Practice Podcast. I live down in Savannah, Georgia, right on the coast. Thanks, Gordon.
Yeah. Who would you like to pass it to?
I'll pass it to Amanda.
Okay, I'm Amanda Patterson. If you see me on Facebook, it's Landry. And I am the admin of my private practice collective. We are a Facebook community for all things private practice. And I live in Palm Beach County. I have a practice in Palm Beach, and then I have a practice in Broward County. And I'll pass it over to Allison Pigeon.
Thank you. I'm Allison Pigeon. I'm a business consultant with Practice of the Practice. I also just launched a podcast last week, which may have been either bad or good timing, depending on how you want to look at it. That's called Grow a Group Practice. I own a virtual assistant company called Move Forward Virtual Assistants, and I also have a private practice here in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. And I am going to pass it to Jessica DePiana.
I'm Jessica DePiana. I am located in the middle of Missouri, so in the middle of the country, and I have Simplified SEO Consulting. We help therapists get their websites ranking well on Google. And I will pass that to Marissa Lawton.
Hi all, I'm Marissa Lawton, and I help therapists repurpose and repackage their clinical skills into online income streams. I'm a military spouse, so I'm from Arizona, but I'm currently living in rural Alabama right now. So I'm here to just kind of talk about what are some options that are non-clinical for you guys to start thinking about making money outside of the therapy room. And I'll go ahead and pass it down to Katie E.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Katie Engler, and I'm actually a board-certified telemental health therapist, which is kicking in pretty nice right about now for me to be able to help people in my state and in my community to see their people. I'm the co-creator of Practicat. It's like an Etsy, an online store for therapists to buy and sell original things and resources that they create for other therapists to use. We have some free products, some paid. And I'm just excited to be here. I have a group practice in Western Kentucky. And thanks for having me, Gordon. I'm going to pass to my other Kentucky girl, Casey Compton.
I knew it. I knew it was going to come from Katie. Thank you. Thank you, Gordon, too, for having me. My name is Casey Compton, and I have a practice called Mindset Behavioral Group. It's located in South Central Kentucky. We are definitely experiencing some things that I feel like people want to know, and it seems like the $1 million question these days with everything going on. I have an expert-led membership community that called Mindset Partners, where I use all my own staff here at my group practice to support other group practice owners. And so that's the gist of it. And I'm on my phone. So let's see. What about Jane?
Hey, y'all. I am Jane Carter, and from Jane Carter Coaching, I help therapists and other solopreneurs to have more money and freedom in their practices. And I also have a private practice here in Asheville, North Carolina. And I'm loving hearing all these other Southern accents.
Asheville is my favorite place in the world.
Isn't it wonderful? Yes. I could just spend this whole time talking about it, but I won't. All right. I will pass it along to, how about John Clark?
All right. Thanks, Jane. I don't think I've truly met you, so this is as close as we might get for a while.
Hi, nice to meet
you. My name is John Clark. I know a bunch of you guys. It's great to see you all. We should do this more often when we're not in crisis, right? I've been a therapist since 2013, and around that time, I also started helping therapists with their private practices. So I've been doing it ever since, and I do it full time now at privatepracticeworkshop.com. Sold my group practice back in April 2019, and currently I live in Paris, France for my wife's job, and have a small online practice as well as running privatepracticeworkshop.com. So that's really it. In terms of living in France, it's an interesting perspective right now because we're kind of, I think, in terms of the coronavirus at the kind of the peak of the wave, whereas they think the U.S. is about to hit the peak of the wave statistically. So I'm happy to share some things about kind of what that is like, if it's helpful, as well as managing a remote business clinically and otherwise. But happy to be here. Thanks, Gordon. Let's go to my friend Joe Sanok.
John Clark, it's great to see your face. It's been a while. So I'm Joe Sanok. I have practice at thepractice.com, and we were the first podcast talking about private practice issues. We help people start, grow, and scale their private practices. And recently we launched Podcast Launch School, where we're helping therapists to launch their own podcasts in cohorts of 4. And so that's been really fun to support really big ideas and people that want to change the world for the better. And we are overseeing now 12 podcasts through that network. And I sold my practice back in June of 2019. And I have been enjoying learning how to be a homeschooling dad as all this has been going on. So I will pass it to David.
Do I have audio? People hear me? Okay. My microphone cut out on me. So technical stuff. I'm David Hall. I am in East Tennessee, just about an hour and a half from Gordon. I am the owner of Psych Maven. We do consulting and particularly CE resources for therapists. And I've been a continuing education provider for about 10 years. That's how Gordon and I met. I also have a group practice, Haven Counseling Center in Knoxville, Tennessee. I've listened to a lot of y'all's podcasts, and so this is cool to meet everybody. Again, I wish it was under different circumstances. I also am slightly envious for people who've sold their practices in 2019. And I'm thinking, but I've got about 9 therapists, including myself and my wife, and practice in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Okay, who do we miss? Katie Lemieux?
Last but not least, hey everybody, This is Katie Lemieux. Gordon, just wanted to say thank you for hosting this, and I'm glad that I did not show up in my gym clothes. I didn't know we were going to be like live, but so good thing I showered and put some makeup on. But it's so cool to be here with all of you. It's like a big networking frenzy for me and meeting some new people, so that's exciting. I'm one of the co-owners of the Private Practice Startup. You might know us as a duo because we are. So Kate Campbell is my partner in crime, and we are often known for our podcast, the Private Practice Startup, as well as our attorney-approved private practice paperwork, and our e-course and coaching program, where we really help therapists work with the clients that they love and live their dream lifestyle, really understanding what it takes to create your dream life and a clear marketing foundation. So we're happy to be here. We're happy to serve you guys during this time. And what an awesome resource, Gordon, you're Thank you.
Thanks. And again, thank you all for agreeing to do this with me. I think this is, like John said, I think we need to do this more often. It's a good thing. So I guess the big question on everybody's minds, just thinking about where we are with COVID-19, certainly our own health, we're concerned. A lot of us have children and that sort of thing. My wife is disabled, so that's on my radar and all of those kinds of things. But I think the other part of it, which I've seen already in my practice this week, is just a big downturn in the number of people showing up for appointments. And so I think that's kind of the big question for people. The other one is just making that quick switch to telemental health and learning about the platforms and how to do that in a confidential, HIPAA secure way and all those kinds of things. So let me, I guess maybe a question to throw out there to everyone, and we'll try to, with this many people doing it virtually, we'll see how this works. But what are you hearing from your people? What are you learning? What are some things that I think would be important for people to keep in mind as they start down this road of just their volume going down, plus making that switch and attracting clients to telemental health? Go ahead, Katie.
All right. So, I think this time is obviously a time where we're having to balance our own anxieties and fears and concerns. So taking care of ourselves is really important so we can continue to serve. And I also think it's a time to be very creative and flexible. I know that sometimes if we get caught up in the panic and fear, it stops us and paralyzes us. And then when we take care of ourselves and kind of have some light, we're able to do some things. So some of the things that myself and our newest member of our team, Susan Block, our startup coach, we've been talking about, things like being creative. She jumped in and contacted her website designer, and they put a pop-up on her website, letting people know who come to the website that, hey, I'm offering telehealth services. This is how to contact me. I also think it's a time that we can be really flexible for private pay folks with our fees. I've just made a decision to discount my fees at this time, letting my clients know, communicating to them. And also I'm doing some mini sessions, right? So at a reduced cost, because we know as people stay together, it could be a really great time or a really difficult time, and they're going to be going through some stresses and things like that. So doing 30-minute mini sessions or a 15-minute check-in just to let people know that we're still there. I haven't done this yet, but also going to contact my AdWords company in regards to things like about telehealth and things like that. Psychology Today, some of you may have gotten that email, and hopefully you did. There's a little notice to put what you're doing during this time. So I definitely would say take advantage of those types of things for sure.
Joe, you had some comments.
Yeah, so this week with our Next Level Practice community, who are all people starting their practices, we hosted a pretty large event of 30 or 40 people that we really talked about kind of how people were doing. And between that and my consulting clients and people that I'm talking to, I'm noticing really two reactions. And I think it's important to figure out where you're naturally being drawn to. And then, so the two reactions that I've noticed are really kind of the sky is falling and, pure freak out lockdown mode, which obviously there are very real things going on that we need to be aware of. Or there's people that I think are very optimistic and creative and coming up with interesting solutions. And on that side, yes, maybe you need to rein it in a bit and realize all that, is going on. But to be able to say, when we look at the statistics of downturns in economy, when there's major shifts such as this, when is the biggest business growth? It's usually in the 12 to 18 months after the initial crisis starts to subside. And so this is going to be a time where there's probably going to be therapy clinics that were already on the brink economically or in regards to their savings, that they may fail. And that's just realistic thinking. But we also need to think about how do we creatively reach out to our community. And so hosting Zoom meetups for local couples to just talk about how you're getting through things, to be a resource, and then to offer a free brainstorming session. There's lots of creativity where even just a few months ago, getting people to think about something online was not as easy as it is right now. So I would just encourage people to come up with really interesting ways to engage with their community.
Yeah, I'd love to make a comment on that. And I love what Katie and Joe said about the creativity. And like my whole mission is to help therapists see that your clinical skills are valuable in session, but also out of session. And so something that one of my students is doing right now, she's building a big program. It's going to be like a 9-month program about building mindfulness. But one creative way that she's supplemented some of these no-shows and cancellations is charged a very small fee. I think she's charging between $5 and $10 just to hold mindfulness meetups. So people are meeting very similarly to this in a Zoom room, and she's leading them through a guided meditation. So she's helping them feel more connected. She's helping them practice like calming anxiety techniques, and she's able to do it without like outside the borders of her license and things like that. So just teaching mindfulness skills is something that we might do in session all the time. It's a skill we use clinically, but can also be repurposed outside the clinical room. So thinking about things like that, where you might have a no-show, but you might be able to supplement that by having 12 people jump on an hour-long meditation class or something like that.
Right. Good suggestion. John, you had your hand raised. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just say a couple things. We did a Q&A a couple days ago, and we had a great deal of participation. So we've fielded questions for a solid hour from therapists. A couple things for therapists to keep in mind. One is when in any sort of crisis, in any degree of crisis, the challenge is to practice both short-term and long-term thinking. And our brains are not particularly wired well for this. We tend to snap to the short-term thinking, make major adjustments to our business, whether that's in terms of pricing or offerings or our marketing. And I think we have to be careful with that. You have to be making some short-term adjustments while also keeping long-term vision. We have to do that all the time as business owners, but especially right now. So the first step is to not freak out. In order to make short and long-term decisions, unfortunately, and I talk about this a lot, therapists, we have a constant threat to our business, especially solo practitioners, that we're not making money if a client's not on the couch. As a group practice owner, your business is not generating revenue if clients are not on the couch, whether you may even have clinicians to pay regardless, depending on your structure. So that's a threat that is always looming. And this is why it's imperative to have a financial cushion for that. I know a lot of people say, well, it's difficult, or I'm already really stretched thin, or I'm trying to pay off debt personally. The reality is there's really no excuse not to have an emergency fund. So I recommend 3 to 6 months of business expenses and personal expenses. Again, I realize this is hard to do, but this is something that took me a couple years to build up. But now that I did it, it takes the crisis off of my shoulders just a little bit. It doesn't mean I'm not still thinking critically about what's going on, but it does create some distance between me and kind of making panicked decisions. The last thing I would say is kind of like, think about what you can do right now in terms of zooming out. What do you want to remember about this time? If this is a bump in the road for a very long-term career and a long, existence of your business, how do you want to use this time to position your brand, to add more value to people instead of asking for the sale, to grow your email list, to work on additional streams of revenue, which is something that we teach and I've been advocating really for a long time. So this is really, it's either an opportunity or it's a challenge. You can see your downtime as an opportunity. You can see this as a time to take some lessons on the chin while starting to put some pieces into place so that when that recovery that Joe was talking about, and I agree that recovery will come, that you're just going to basically be doubling down on your efforts and kind of what happens next.
Thanks, John. Yeah. So Jane, I think you had a comment.
Okay, so yeah, I would second what John is saying, to think long term. And the analogy I've been using with clients is dollar cost averaging. So when you're investing in the stock market, it's smart to invest a certain amount each month. And when the stock market is up, great, but you can buy fewer shares. When the stock market is down, bummer, but you can buy more shares. And this is kind of a time where literally the stock market is down, but activity may be down in your practice. but it is such a rich time to invest in your relationships with referrers, to work on whatever product you might be developing, to develop goodwill, to make sure that your clients know that you care about them. And that investment is going to just take off later when this passes, and it will pass. And mindset-wise, I've really been encouraging people to decide now, who do you want to be during this period? To really be intentional about, okay, a couple of years from now, when I look back on this experience, who do I want to be able to say that I was? And how did I maintain myself? And was I, panicking, or was I a leader? So thinking long-term right now, it's so hard to do, but I think it's going to be paramount.
Thanks, Jane. Let's see, Jessica, I think you had a comment too.
Yeah, I think the thing that's really been on my mind a lot is, even if there's a downturn in our business right now, our leadership is so needed. Mental health is, everybody's nodding because we know this. We know that people are going to struggle with their mental health. I met with my clinicians yesterday, and we really focused on serving our community during this time. Sorry. I think, can everybody hear me okay? I'm having little messages that there are issues. Okay.
You're good.
Okay. I think that by serving our community, we are thinking about the long term, because we are going to solidify those referral sources and that sort of. I have, in typical Jessica style, I put up an online counseling page last week and optimized it real quick. And now I have all my therapists writing blog posts. But the focus of our blog posts is on providing truly helpful information to our community. And then through doing that, we're serving our community. Even if people don't come through our doors right now, they're going to associate our practice with positive things. In addition, people are being active on local Facebook groups and hosting like mindfulness stuff. We've gotten creative with offering, I have a team that I'm offering 15-minute sessions to, because there's no way they'd sit still at a computer for 45 minutes. But that's really just the focus I think that our practice has taken, is how can we be a leader in our community and be associated with the positivity and the hope, and encouraging our whole community to focus on mental health, because the longer this goes on, the more we are going to be needed, and the more concerned I'm going to get for our communities if we're not doing our own self-care and putting ourselves out there in creative ways.
In the words of Goonies, this is our time.
If there ever was a time for us, it's now.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So let's see. Got lots of hands up here. Let me go to David. You had some comments.
Yes. I mean, ditto for what everyone is saying. And so I'm thinking through of just certain things that haven't been said that have come up for me in this last week. And as a side note, one of the things I find interesting was Gordon and I were talking in a meeting about a month and a half ago about putting together a course called Recession Proofing Your Practice. And Gordon's comment was, I don't think anyone's going to be interested in that. And a month and a half ago, no one was. So it's funny how that happens. For me, a dynamic I've been dealing with clients, particularly last week, and it's funny how it's moved so quickly, is I'm in a very, very politically conservative area, and I had a lot of, I guess we'll call them coronavirus truthers, of people that were mad as I was pushing things online. And so there's a lot of coaching I was doing with staff of trying to mitigate that. And the way I kind of landed on it was, a lot of my staff, as they were reaching out to clients, were overly apologetic and saying, this is okay with you. And my comment to them was, I go, you need to treat this like you're an airline and you've changed terminals. Like, you can apologize, but this is what we're doing. Like, your flight now is leaving out of gate C, and I realize it's all the way across there, and that's not where you want it, and it's not near the food court, but this is what we're doing. And I noticed that we have actually not had a lot of attrition this week. A lot of people have moved. We're doing a few sessions still in the office. We haven't shut down our office completely. because we have a lot of space and we're able to kind of keep it fairly contained, but it looks like that's where we're moving this week. So that's been an interesting dynamic. And the other thing as a business owner is, I really appreciate and want to affirm all the positive things that people are saying, but one of the things I've had to be realistic about is to be realistic with my staff. I had interviewed in the last month, I've interviewed 3 different people to join the practice within the next few months. And I've reached out to all of them to say, hey, I still like you as a candidate. I still want to continue this conversation, but I'm not wanting to overpromise. Like, I don't know what it's going to look like for us in a month. And I really struggle with that. I really want to be everybody's savior. I really want to, be the provision for all my staff. But I've learned from some hard burns I've had in the past that I can't do that. And, I'm not doing anyone any service to say that. But at the same time, I really want to put myself out there. I reached out to all my staff individually because we're all, an eat what you kill sort of thing. We get paid based as we see clients. And I said to all my staff, look, if you reach a point where you're struggling with bills, talk to me, because I've kept a reserve fund for things. I go, I want to know. I don't want you to feel embarrassed. I want us to figure this out together, and really trying to reinforce that sense of solidarity that we have. I've been encouraged, though, that people have been quickly moving to telehealth, and there hasn't been a lot of things. And the other things, it's naturally led to a shift in just my other business stuff. I have a course on doing continuing education and a friend of mine events, and a friend of mine who's co-launching it with me said, you need to really fatten up your online section on that. I'm like, yeah. So that's my project for this coming week. And, but the concept of serenity, I guess, is something I've been thinking about and talking a lot about with my staff. Of like, there's a whole lot of this that we just don't know. And how do we have a certain amount of acceptance to be proactive and embrace our agency that we have to positively affect our community, to positively affect our clients, to be proactive, not just reactive in what we're doing, but also have a certain amount of acceptance that I don't know what it's going to look like tomorrow. I don't know what we've only had 1 confirmed case in my county, but that could change, that could skyrocket today. And then I'm absolutely shutting the doors today. Or who knows? And so I'm very interested to hear, John, some of your perspective of what this has looked like in France and going. So anyway, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks, David. Yeah. Let's see. Let me get to Allison. Yeah, I think you had a comment.
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, I think just in my conversations with consulting clients this week, obviously a lot of people are in freak out mode, and I'm choosing to focus on kind of the positives that are coming out of this whole situation. So in particular, in my state, insurance didn't really widely cover telehealth. And literally last week, all of those barriers came down. And so all the insurance companies now that we work with are allowing telehealth. And I think now there's no going back. Like, the floodgates are open. Like, they're going to allow it now forever and ever. And that, for me, it is exciting because it's always something that I've wanted to do more of in my practice. But because insurance didn't cover it, it was kind of a tough sell for our clients. So I'm just looking at, my 3 to 6 month plan. Like, how can I really, probably potentially double our client volume just by adding telehealth and, kind of making plans around that. And I think, making those shifts now in our businesses and making those plans is really important, and not necessarily, just saying like, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to take a pause, because I think there's a lot of great opportunities and a lot of positive things happening that we can focus on right now.
Okay, thanks. Let's see. Casey, saw your hand.
Now I forgot what I was going to say. But everything that everyone is saying, those are such great ideas. It's getting my wheels turning a little bit too for some things that my practice can do for our staff. I was just thinking about how I've been so fortunate over the last couple of months to have opportunities to sit with people that are doing such great things in my eyes in this world, and, have real conversations with them
beyond what you're going to get at a keynote. And I don't know if it all happened for a reason or what you may believe, but I feel like everything kind of aligned for me in a way where, I literally flew to New York twice in 1 week last week, and it was terrifying. The first time we went, everything was fairly normal. I got back home, was home for 2 days, flew back to New Jersey, and I felt like I was doing something so dirty and wrong just by being in an airport. And it kind of took me back to my middle school days when I would sneak out of the house and, like run around with my friends and do things that I shouldn't have been doing. It was just so strange. And, but it gave me a lot of good opportunity. I got to speak with some amazing people, and I read some really good books on the plane, and it inspired me when I came back home. And then all of this happened, to have some really frank, but meaningful conversations with my staff. And we spent Monday morning having an impromptu 2-hour meeting not about this really. It was just about, like, what's the goal here? Like, what's the goal in our practice? What's the goal of this business? And I asked that question after I read the book called The Goal. And if you all have not read it, you should, because it's amazing. But I realized that my team didn't even know what the goal was. And, I thought, shame on me. Like, that's my fault for not setting that leadership standard to make sure that we're all working towards the same thing. And we sat there for 2 hours and really hashed out a lot of stuff. And, I felt like this sense of unity after that meeting. And especially with all of this, all this chaos going on outside of just the normal business stuff. I mean, my team has really just pitched in. I have seen things out of them that I will forever be grateful for. They are stepping up and making decisions in this business. They have come to me, multiple people have come to me and called me on my cell phone and said, Casey, I don't know how you do this. If this is what it feels like to have to make these kinds of decisions every single day, I'm so sorry that I've not been more of help there. And so, like, for us, talking about the positive, it really has shown from a system standpoint where we still have weaknesses and how we can create even more automation in our practice so that we're not so dependent on people. And my team is noticing this, and like they're coming up with things that I don't have to come up with anymore. And I can't even tell you, like, just having that conversation with the 10 of them, we made sure not to have more than 10 people in the room. They joked about that, but just having that conversation with them, I swear, like, I know that I feel a ton better. And I know that they feel a ton better. So I guess if I had to say anything is, if you do have a support staff, for us it's kind of scary in a lot of ways because I have a large team and I pay a lot of people a lot of money to run this business. And, so I'm facing things like potential layoffs and trying to avoid all of that. But if anything, this whole issue so far has brought us closer together, and I'm thankful for that piece of it.
Yes. Thanks, Casey. Let's see. See my other Kentucky girl there. Go ahead, Katie Englert.
Yeah, I think my brain works in a really, in a way that's really, but what do I do right now? Like, what do I do next? What step do I take next? And right now it feels like money is a non-renewable resource. And we all know that time is really our only non-renewable resource. So I think we need to just be using it wisely right now. It feels like money is right now. It really feels that way. But to remember to use our time wisely and to sit down and if you need to communicate with your team on a morning and evening basis, if you have a team, and say, hey, I'm going to give you a lot of information 2 times a day. I'm going to have to hold myself in this office and get some things done. That's what I've had to do over the past week, and my team's been great with that. So just sharing with them and being super transparent with what's tough. And I think, having a resource of, this is what I do next. This is something I do. I'm going to send a letter to every single referral source that I have that knows me, because they know me, they like me, they send me their referrals. But we've all read the books, that tell you to know, like, and trust. This is a time to build a lot of trust with those people and just serve them, in my opinion. So I think to spend the time and let them know exactly what you are offering, if you're offering insurance, what the cost might be to their clients or their team. Those kind of things are really specific things that you can do right now and to deepen that relationship. And I just finished a book called The Chief Joy Officer. And my word of the year, if you will, was joy. I was really banking on it. And I'm still banking on it. So it's just a way to bring joy to your life every day and to other people, no matter what's going on. And I think that is a real opportunity that we have here right now. And then that's just what I wanted to share. So there are practical steps. If you're feeling frozen, there are little steps that you can take, and I'm going to be sharing those too.
You're muted, Gordon.
Hey, sorry, I hit the button the wrong way. Thanks, Katie. Amanda, you had something to say.
All righty. Well, I made little notes so I didn't forget, and there he goes. I was going to talk about him. My thing is flexibility this week, right? Like, we have to be so flexible in ways that we are probably not used to or not comfortable with. And that's been like a really big push for my clinicians, in terms of like, let's work with our clients to be flexible. Let's work with people who, we've had a lot of people who have wanted to see us in session, and we've, been working on transitioning everybody online, I think, just like everybody else has been. And, in my family, we have this like funny saying that when we're asked to go outside of our comfort zone, we have to put our flexibility hat on. And that's been a really big thing. In my Facebook group, my private practice collective, that's been like a question that's like come up over and over and over. It's like, how do I pivot? How do I shift? How do I think outside of the box? How do I do things different than I've normally done in like a very short amount of time? Like, how do I get a consent form out to people right away? How do I get a platform right away? People are looking for resources right now. So Gordon, I thank you for, putting out this and putting resources up, and for everybody. I know everybody's been on putting resources up. That's a big thing. In terms of Facebook groups and resources, I think that we have to always fall back to our boards and our liability insurance and the insurance companies. There's been a lot of information going around about whether something's ethical or not, whether seeing clients is ethical or not, whether, insurance companies are going to pay for telehealth or not, whether even we were just chatting about what the rules are right now. And I think that while it's real, as somebody who has a large Facebook group, I would never discourage somebody from stopping to look on my Facebook group and the other Facebook groups. It's a great place to congregate and find the first level of information. But I definitely think we need to be calling our liability insurance. That's been my comment on so many things. Hey, you probably need to call your liability insurance. Hey, you probably need to call this insurance company, or go directly to your boards. I've emailed our boards a few times this week to get clarification on things, because I would hate, for something to come down and that I saw on Facebook that wasn't really, that accurate. So I agree with what everybody said. Let's, change with the times, roll with things, kind of shift, kind of adapt our practices. And I do agree, this will be short term. I was just telling somebody earlier, as soon as this is over, anybody's practice who dip will probably rise tremendously, because people are going to need the support. And there's even been a lot of people this week who just want the support around this and need that support. So I think being flexible, going to our sources, and being supportive of each other in whatever space that we can now is going to be really important. So thank you, Gordon, for having us all here.
Yes. Thanks, Amanda. Yes. I've got, this is such a great conversation, and hearing from one person I haven't heard from. Whitney, give your thoughts on this.
Well, it took like 15 minutes for me to figure out where the hand feature was. So, so glad to be here, Gordon. So we do get really wrapped up into the details of our practices. And I found myself right when all this went down, flipping out, right? What platform, paperwork, all these things that we're all asking, right? And now that things are calming just a little bit, I think that this is our like moment. We were talking about moment to shine, like moment to take that negative and create that positive experience. And we numb ourselves with so many things all the time. We're always asking for rest. And so now we were given rest and we're given this space to be quiet. And so as therapists, as business owners, taking advantage of that to really reflect on personal growth, on spiritual growth, on soulful growth, and doing that with our clients too, like listening to our inner voice that we probably quiet all the time, right? And taking this moment and making something really positive out of it. Like my fear is that we'll get through all this coronavirus stuff and our nation will look back and somehow be the same and we won't really be changed. And that would be really scary. And I want to take this moment to really change myself and in essence, help my clients be changed, because we can really only take our clients to the level that we ourselves have gone. And so not letting yourself just kind of pass through this, but really letting it be a time to slow down, be with our families, and really be reflective in what we're doing.
Yeah, thanks, Whitney. Again, ditto to everybody's comments. I know folks, John, I know folks want to hear probably from you just a little bit about your experience being abroad and the telehealth and that sort of thing, and what you're learning, because I think that's just of interest to people.
I'll be quick. And I'll also say that when this whole thing started to unfold, I was still in the US and had to get back to my wife here in Paris. She was already back. Getting back was quite difficult. Traveling is very stressful right now. And when you're traveling, or in my case, traveling internationally, it really helped me see the magnitude of this. Also, we are in France. We're quite close to Italy, where things are really, really bad. And even so, again, we're kind of riding the peak of that. I got back literally the morning that the lockdown was announced. And again, not to invoke fear in people unnecessarily, but the lockdown for us means we can't leave the house unless we fill out a form. It basically indicates why this is completely necessary for us to go out, whether it's for food or medicine, basically. So that is genuinely my situation right now. This is day 5 of lockdown. I would just say this. I hope that therapists, especially in the US right now, will think about priorities and think about what really matters. I think what really matters is your health. I think what matters is your clinician's health, your client's health. And then I think it's your money and your business. I think a lot of people are making decisions to keep seeing clients in person right now because of the business and the bottom line. And to be honest, I think it's a mistake. So if I have some feeling or passion about this, I'm sorry, but I think it's a mistake. Even if you're in a rural area, and if you think you're low risk, your clients are low risk, even if you're not sick, you're placing others at risk right now. And the other thing is that's happening in Italy and Europe is you're placing our hospitals at risk, and the hospitals in the US are continuing to get overloaded. And the more, my brother-in-law is a physician. He just got exposed to coronavirus in the ER, so he can't go to work anymore. The more people get exposed, the more overwhelmed the hospitals get. It's a real problem. I also don't want me or my wife having a non-coronavirus related issue and going to the hospital and not being able to get in. So people here are being turned away from the hospital for legitimate issues because they're overwhelmed. And they're having to, intubate people from the coronavirus. So I just don't think it's worth it for people to still be seeing clients in person right now. I mean, that's just my opinion today on Friday, March 20th. And again, I think things are going to get a bit more intense in the US. Some US states are already starting to go on lockdown, so to speak. California is the first one today to just impose more strict regulations. I think just for practice owners, there's no reason not to transition your practice completely online right now or do it yesterday. So again, I just don't think there's really any good argument for seeing people in person right now. I don't think it's necessary. So get out ahead of it, right? And especially if they do lockdown things in your state, or if you're in a big city, they're going to lock things down and it's going to feel even more intense because people are stacked on top of one another. So I would just say for practice owners, if you haven't already rolled out your plan, I would just say do it now and get ahead of it before your hand is forced.
Yes, I think that's a really good point, John. It's I know again, we're in an area here in East Tennessee where we haven't really, we're usually the last to feel the wave of everything across the country. But it's, yeah, I think that's the one thing that, just for those of us that have children and have people that my wife is disabled and all of that, just use some common sense around those things. And I think even though we're not feeling it right now, the whole strategy with this is to get everybody isolated and that sort of thing. And I think the other thing that came to mind for me as you were talking, John, was just for folks that out there that aren't sure, maybe not quite ready to switch over to telemental health, it's very easy. And there's lots of platforms, and all of us will have resources on our web pages and on Facebook where you can get the top 3 that come to mind for me that are real easy to do are Doxy.me, VC, and then Google Hangouts or Google just Google Hangouts is another one. I know you guys think of me as a Google guru, but believe it or not, I'm still using Doxy just because to me that was the easy one to go to with my therapist. So, but anyway, just wanted to say that. Let's see, Joe, I know your hand's been up, so if you got something else you wanted to
I think it was still up from before. I thought that it got unraised. Yeah. Everything everyone said, great information. I'm so glad we're coming together as a community to get good information out there. And I think that my big thing is just view this as an adventure that we're going to talk about the rest of our lives.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, other parting thoughts from people. I know I want to be aware of our time. And again, I'm so grateful to all of you for spending this time. And hopefully it's going to be valuable information for all our audiences. So let's see. I saw Katie's hand. So go ahead, Katie.
I just wanted to, two Katies.
All right. Yeah. So let's go with Katie Lemieux. You go ahead first and then Katie.
Like Amanda, I was taking quite a bit of notes and stuff like that. And I think, this process is very isomorphic in regards to us and what's going on with people in the world and our clients. And, a lot of us in our position of leadership, and even if you're a solopreneur, you're in a position of leadership, right, to your clients. And, one of the hardest things sometimes is the self-care. I'm a natural doer. So I want to get up and just go when I'm anxious and trying to figure out how to serve more. But really taking that time to be quiet and do your own self-care is just really essential. And I know that's for me where the creative thoughts really come up. One question that people are asking that I've been wrestling with, and I know I forget who said it, maybe it was the other Katie, about, money is a renewable resource and time isn't, but there is really a fear that, people have not planned financially for this. And this is kind of my question, I think, to John. Some of the things that I've suggested is obviously like jumping in, like decreasing automatic payments. I know the government's issuing a lot of different things. So being aware of the news and what is becoming available to you. There's small business loans. There's so much of that stuff. And now more than ever, I think now is the time to go ahead and look long-term and how are you going to not only recover from this, but what are you going to prepare for in the future? And it's a time to really talk about financial literacy and really look at those things. I think it's paramount. I'm grateful that I have followed numerous systems, one being Profit First, and then I follow a specific system in my own personal life where I feel okay. I know a lot of people do not, and that is definitely a really concern. And the other thing too is like during this time of crisis, I think of, that we might not act the best we can be, right? Because we're trying to make decisions on the fly. I know something came up for us last week where we made a huge mistake and we had to clean it up and take responsibility, and that was okay. And so my words to you are to be kind and compassionate to yourself, but also reach out to your therapist community and friends and colleagues to talk, stay connected, chat, run things by them. That's just so really important because you two are doing the best that you can. And that's really essential. And just some like final thoughts in regards to taking this as an opportunity. I love, there's the symbol in Chinese, I believe, for crisis is also opportunity. So within crisis, there's always great opportunity. And as a therapist who works with couples in affairs, it's a great opportunity to rebuild a relationship, right? So it's going to depend on how you look at this. And, I think about ways to stay connected. Some of your clients, maybe they just can't financially see you anymore, but this might be a great opportunity to utilize your own skills, and maybe you create videos or blogs that you still send to them and share with them, so you're staying connected. And then I'm always looking at, how do you repurpose content, right? Then you're gonna put that on your website or share it on your social media. So this is a time where you have that long list of to-dos, like, I want to do this when I have time. Now is the time, and this is a great way for you to continue to serve, and also work on your business. And also, there's probably some therapists that you really wanted to connect with, like set up some like online, meetups and dates. I think that's really fun to be able to do and connect with them and kind of go from there. So those are my final thoughts, Gordon. Really appreciate you hosting this, and I'm sure everybody watching does too.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. And yeah, you know what? This is just kind of a little bit of a tangent. And this is an idea I thought about. I don't know if it's a good idea, but it's an idea is for those, particularly those therapists that have cash paying practices. And if they're seeing a downturn in the number of people that are coming to them because of the economic situations they're in, is maybe for a short period of time offering a discounted rate or something like that. Again, it's an idea. I don't know if it's a great idea. And you have to really kind of look at your own numbers and look, you don't want to set a precedent or whatever, but I'm just thinking about giving back to the community in that sense. So, Katie Engler, I'll let you go next.
I'll be really quick here. I just want to also reiterate that there are some HIPAA things going on now as well that I don't think we've really talked about in here very much, but you need to be very careful because HIPAA is still the law of the land. The enforcement of that is what's been eased here recently. And if we're thinking of, I think John mentioned short-term and long-term thinking, and you're going to make telehealth a permanent part of what you're doing, you really need to think about how you're going to set that up and for the long term, and reiterate to new people locally that you might start online, but then you'll have the opportunity to come into the office after it's safe again too. So just a couple of tips that I know we are running short on time, but just wanted to make sure that are at least on people's radar during this time.
Yes, absolutely. Jane.
Really brief thought. One of the things that gives me hope is even just looking at this group, this profession barely existed. This came about after the last recession. There was maybe one person out there doing private practice consulting, one or two that I'm aware of, Lynn Grodsky. And the fact that there are so many of us tells me, okay, so much creativity and newness and new opportunities come out of these crises. So case in point right here. We're going to be okay.
Yes, thanks. That's great. Yeah, so let's see. Who else have we got? David, did you have some parting thoughts?
Yeah, I do. Again, just wanted to thank you, Gordon, for having this. And I appreciate the merging of minds in this. And for anyone who's listening to this at a later point, one of the things I really enjoy about listening to your podcast, Gordon, and other people on here is there's a sense of kind of sharing brain space. And, you can have a lot of creativity on your own, but I'm not nearly as creative as I am when I have the opportunity to collaborate. And there's also the sense and to your point of speaking very kind of directly to the safety stuff, John, one of the things that is hard in this situation, and I appreciate your words in that, is if we're practice leaders or solopreneurs, whatever it is, we're trying to make decisions. Sometimes it feels in a bubble. We're trying to figure out and this is such a dynamic experience. I know I fully expect that we'll listen to this later and think, whoa, this, what did I think about it at this moment and where did it go? And just even changing thoughts from, changing thoughts of my clients of how they're treating this. And, one of the things that is so, I think, important for any of us, no matter where we are in practice, is are we trying to make decisions in a vacuum? And I don't think we ever make better decisions in a vacuum. I think being able to, Gordon and I talk about at least once a month, usually more frequently, about just things that we're doing business-wise, things we're thinking about practice-wise. We talk about staffing issues. And So anyone, if you're on your own, particularly if you're on your own, don't try to make these decisions in a vacuum. Like, reach out to people, reach out to other people in your community, reach out to friends you have. But also, let this be a creative space. To the comment that was made before about how the last recession really created things. I was building up private practice for the first time at the end of the last recession. And so it was people like Casey Truffaut was someone I read a lot then, because I didn't know how to do this. And so there is a lot of opportunity in this crisis. And I'm looking forward to how that is going to expand creativity and also expand how our clients get mental health resources. But, big encouragement just for anyone listening. Like, if you have doubt, it doesn't mean you're a failure. It just means you're an honest human. And in that doubt, reach out and get feedback and test ideas. And I'd rather they'll come out of this particular moment we're in looking back and thinking like, oh, I was overcautious, rather than saying I was not. If I'm going to have a criticism, I want to accept back criticism, and versus if being reckless. So that's a big encouragement I would have for anyone who's listening to this.
Yes. Thanks, David. Casey, did you have any parting thoughts?
Not any great ones. I just wanted to say that I don't know. There's just something about this group of people, this profession. I've never seen anything like it anywhere I've ever been or anything I've ever done. I feel like some of my best friends are people just like you that I've met that own practices and have gone on to do more things. So just for me, I'm so thankful to have each and every one of you that I can just text and say, what the heck is going on? It's such a nice, supportive group of people. So just like what David said, if you don't have that, you've got to get that like right now. So thank you for, all of you, and especially you, Gordon. You're my favorite.
Thanks, Casey. You're very kind. So Jessica, did you have some parting thoughts?
Yeah, I think I really like that we've had such focus on the long-term versus short-term, what we need to be doing. Gordon, I think you are brilliant for getting us all together, because it's so much fun to hear all of this. And I feel like everything that most of us are saying is really kind of bouncing off each other, and this sort of thing, whether you're connecting one-on-one with colleagues in your area or outside your area, or you're listening to things like this or participating in things like this, I think is really critical. And in the short term, there are going to be some things we have to do, and some of them may be painful. Just realistically speaking, moving to online practice for a lot of us is painful. Convincing my clinicians to move to online practice, weeks ago when I started talking about this, they just thought I was totally overreacting. And then even this week when I said, we're moving online, for some of them, they're like, but I have this client, this client, this client. And I'm like, and we may lose some clients. That's the reality. And we, in the short term, have to do some painful things. But I also really appreciate that so many of us have talked about what we can do in the long term to set us up for success, and how we can use this time to not be all doom and gloom. Once we've done the practical things to move our practice online or whatever we need to do, then sitting down and going, what am I going to do now so that I am one of those people that has huge growth when we start coming out of this?
Yes, thanks. And I love the fact, what's so encouraging to me is the fact that we all seem to be on the same page about our thoughts. Allison, parting thoughts from you?
Yeah, I just, when all of this was really becoming very serious, sort of towards the end of last week here in Pennsylvania, I was thinking like, oh, probably the, number of new consulting clients is probably going to slow down or stop altogether, but that hasn't been the case. And that's given me a lot of hope that people are still, looking at, taking their solo practice and growing it into a group practice, and realizing like, despite everything that's going on, like there's still, the baby wants to talk too. There's still, opportunities here. And, this whole situation, obviously, there's not going to be less mental health issues after all of this. There's only, unfortunately, going to be more mental health issues. And so we're needed more than ever. So just encouraging people. And I'm also encouraged by the people who are reaching out who still want to, expand their practices. And I think even though this week or last week, your calls may have dropped off dramatically, like it's going to be a boomerang effect, and it's, people are going to come flooding back. So I'm encouraged by that.
Yes, I agree. I think we got to keep in the forefront of our minds, this is just a season, and it will pass. It will pass. So let's see, Whitney and Amanda, I think I need to get parting thoughts from the two of you. So either one of you can go first.
Yes. Just don't get so caught up in the details. Allow yourself to kind of sit and relax. Don't get, even though the laws are important, don't get stressed out with all that kind of stuff. Take care of yourself, because that's really how you're going to best take care of your practice and best take care of the people that you serve.
Yes. And you know what, to just kind of echo on that a little bit, I think it's okay to take a media break. I was talking with had a client earlier this week, and they're just laser focused on what the news is and the numbers and all of that. And I kind of gave him permission to take a break from that. You don't have to keep it in the forefront of your mind, but yeah. So yeah, that's not to stress too much about this. So Amanda.
So my, Jerry Springer final, departing words are, take this time to really, evaluate like what your values are and what time you want to spend doing things. But not that I want to spend time cleaning my house, but it's really a nice time to get the house cleaned up in a way that, everybody's talking about how they're organizing their closets and how they're cleaning things. And I looked at a baseboard and I'm like, yeah, those are getting cleaned this weekend. And so, it's just kind of giving us time to do things that we don't normally, maybe put time to, or just like Jessica said, start writing some blog posts, or my goal through this is to get my website updated. And so it's things that I put on the back burner. I don't necessarily want to do, but I know I need to do them. They are important to me. And so I'm using that this time for that. And I would say for everybody else to really maybe make a list of some things that without stress, I like what Whitney says, don't stress yourself out too much about it. Just kind of jot down some things you want to get done, both personally, professionally. It's one thing I love is, every night, for the most part, my husband and I go on walks together. It's really therapeutic. And we've seen so many people we don't normally see out there. And it's been really nice to see so many families connecting and people doing things. So it's kind of one of the, side effects of this. That's really nice. So just take that time for all of us and anybody watching this.
Well, guys, thank you so much. I think we went just a little bit over, but I think this information is just going to be so valuable for people. Thank you all so much for joining me for this. We need to do this again. This was a great virtual party in the midst of this crisis. And I said I was going to bring a bottle of wine, but it's still at home. So, anyway, glad you all joined this. And we'll, for those listening to the podcast, you'll be able to hear, I'm going to share this, the recording of this with all of these other wonderful people, and they'll have it out on their networks as well. I know Katie Lemieux over at the Private Practice Startup talked about having a resource page for people, and I'm sure some of the others of us will have the same thing as we move through all of this. So thanks, guys, again for joining me. Well, folks, thanks again for joining me for this special episode of the Practice of Therapy podcast. Again, and so many thanks to the wonderful consultants and friends that joined me for this. Couldn't have done it without them. And I hope that this information and the inspiration and the words of wisdom you heard from everyone are going to be inspiring to you and just maybe give you a little bit of comfort through this difficult time that we find ourselves in around this COVID-19 pandemic that we're in the middle of. And so special thanks again to Katie Lemieux, to Marissa Lawton, David Hall, John Clark, Katie Englert, Jane Carter, Jessica Tapana, Casey Compton, Whitney Owens, Joe Sanok, and Amanda Landry. They are just great friends, and I'm so grateful to them for taking the time out of their day to record this with me. And again, if you want to go back and just see us all together and our faces, you can check out the video of this as well. There'll be links in the show summary and show notes to all these people's websites and their information, and just want to make sure that we share that with you, and be sure to share with your friends as well, and repost on social media or anywhere you want to get this information out. You know, it takes a community to get through a crisis, and that's what we're trying to do here. So take care, folks. Stay well, and we'll be talking to you another time. Been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer. Please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com for more information, resources, and tools to help you in starting, building, and growing your private practice. And if you haven't done so already, please sign up to receive the free private practice startup guide at practiceoftherapy.com. The information in this podcast is intended to be accurate and authoritative concerning the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, or producers are rendering legal, accounting, or clinical advice. If you need a professional, you should find the right person for that.